It's September 20. Ukraine Media Center confirms starts its operation. My name is Svetlana Chaparenko, and we start our day with finding out about the situation in Kherson and Kherson region. Joining us online is Oleksandr Tolokonnikov, spokesman of the Kherson Regional Military Administration. Mr. Oleksandr, good afternoon. Good afternoon, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Mr. Oleksandr, we know that the enemy keeps shelling the region every day, every night, so can you please tell us how the last night has passed? We know there were intense shellings within the last days, and so what are the consequences? Yes, within the last day we've been shelled quite intensely. The number of incoming projectiles and shellings increased almost twice. The number of shellings was 118. From the East Bank, they launched about 600 projectiles, launched from different types of weapons. Almost 10 aviation bombs fell over Techninska and Bereslavska communities. Unfortunately, there is some destruction, but fortunately with no casualties. Yesterday, the city of Kherson was shelled for an umpteenth time by Russians. Unfortunately, it resulted in a number of casualties. A projectile was targeting a trolley bus stop. A man of 49 years, a police sergeant, was killed right away. He got under the shelling near an apartment store. That man was defending his homeland since the beginning of the war, in 2014. He was taking part in Ilovaisk operation. He was helping his brothers in arms. He was helping his denizens in the city of Kherson. Unfortunately, the Russians have taken away his life, and we extend our condolences to his family. Also, this shelling resulted in targeting of a trolley bus. One man was injured heavily. One more man was injured moderately. The man who was heavily injured subsequently died in the hospital. Unfortunately, the doctors were not able to save his life. The second man is currently in the hospital and his condition is being stabilized. Yesterday in the evening, about 6 o'clock in the evening, the Russians shelled an educational institution in the district of Korabelny. 2 women ended up under shelling. One of them was hospitalized. Another one was provided basic military aid. So yesterday, 2 people died as a result of Russian aggression and 2 more were injured. The Russians were shelling the medical institutions in the settlements along the area, along the riverbank. They were also targeting storage facilities. The representatives of State Emergency Service set out on missions to put out the fire. And unfortunately, 5 more people ended up as casualties of this shelling. Mr. Oleksandr, you mentioned that the intensity of the shellings has grown. Do we observe any changes in types of weapons and projectiles that the Russians use against us? Well, they increased the number of aviation bombs dropped over us. Today they dropped 4 aviation bombs on Techninska community and 2 on Mykolaievska community. There are no reports of casualties so far, but every day, previously it was 2 to 3 aviation bombs per day, sometimes 1 or even no aviation bombs at all, but now they use up to 10 aviation bombs per day. Mr. Oleksandr, what is the humanitarian situation in the region? Are the basic necessities of the people covered? Well, talking about the humanitarian needs, the international foundations, international organizations keep helping us. We continue bringing water. Well, both us and the international organizations continue bringing water to those settlements where the water is not sufficient. As to the communications, we continue reestablishing communication with the district of Ostriv. We have reconnected 6 more houses recently, so we're moving quite gradually. Unfortunately, we are low on specialists who are able to reestablish the electric power supply to the district of Ostriv. Also, there is a problem with the high groundwaters because the electric power supply was gone through the underground communications.
Повертаємось в ефір, пан Олександр.
We're getting back online. Mr. Oleksandr is about to join us in quite a minute. We apologize for technical inconveniences.
Пане Олександре.
Mr. Oleksandr, are you back with us? So let's get back to our conversation. You said that the people are not sufficient to, or like the number of the specialists is not sufficient to reestablish the power supply to the district of Kherson. Yes, we have a problem with the people, and the groundwaters go very high, and the communications were running underground through the underground channels. This is why now it's important to inspect all the communications to make sure that we can reconnect the district to the power supply. We're renewing it gradually. The gas supply is reestablished in almost all of the homes. Now it's not technical, but drinking water running to the island. And what's remaining is the electric power supply. Now we've reconnected 187 settlements to the power supply out of 278. There are 30 settlements where reestablishing of the power supply is impossible due to the constant incessant shelling. Those are the settlements located along the bank of the river Dnipro, and all the works performed by the power technicians are performed under incessant shelling, and thus we may put people's lives in jeopardy. There are 10 more settlements where people do not reside there, and we've undertaken the decision not to reconnect them to the power supply. We continue working on reestablishing the gas supply. Now almost 80 out of 88 settlements are reconnected to the gas supply. The work is quite active in this area because we need to reestablish the gas supply before the winter, the cold period is coming. Also, in the area of water supply, we continue drilling new wells in those areas where there were waters with water supply. Now, in those settlements that are above the destroyed Kakhovka Dam, due to the fall of the level of water, the wells are dry, and so we've drilled about 15 new wells to make sure they have the new water supply. We're laying the new waterways, and our plan is to make it better than it used to be before the war. Well, talking about the preparation to the winter, is the region supplied with the necessary number of generators? Are you going to deploy the resilience stations? Yes, the resilience stations will be mobile. They will be mostly stationed in those spots where they were previous winter. All the communities, all their utility services and medical institutions are provided with the generators, so just in case any problems with electricity supply arises, the generators will be operating there, specifically at the resilience stations. And talking about preparation to the winter in general, to the heating season, we are ready almost 80%. The preparation works are still underway, but sometimes in some places, due to the constant shellings, there is a damage of heat supply lines, and our technicians keep working on repairing them. So let's hope that we will be able to avoid any critical moments, and we will be able to pass the winter better than the previous one, when everything was destroyed by the Russians and we had to launch it in a prompt mode. Talking about those settlements where there is no light and gas, we are in negotiations with different charity foundations that are intended to help the populations to heat their homes, with the stoves. And also the population will be provided with the pellets or lumber. Sir, what is the situation with ecology, specifically in the area of Kakhovka Dam? Well, it's difficult to assess the losses resulting from that catastrophe. The environmental specialists keep working. We are mostly interested in solving the problem. Well, not the problem, but something that we were preparing to the eruptions of some epidemics. Fortunately, we were able to avoid any such cases. Now we're assessing the losses because and damage, because a lot of things have changed, including the irrigation for the agrarians and the fall of level of water in many rivers and bays. But the environment, the ecology, well, first of all, the forests of Kherson region were affected the most. Like 2/3 of all of the forests, all of the ecosystem was basically destroyed. And in the spring, we are about to see how the nature will be renewing, and we will make conclusions, and we will see the opinion of the environmental specialists, what will be the expenses to renew the environmental system. And recently we've heard about the death of ex-head of Kherson Regional Administration. Is there any information about that? Well, one of the versions was suicide, and the law enforcement also consider a number of other versions. So I think as soon as they come up with any opinion, they will give their comments on this case. I think that soon we will have some results that we will be able to communicate shortly. Thank you very much, sir. Let's give the floor to our colleagues so they can ask questions. Good afternoon, Ukrinform Valentina Rikal. I want to ask about the education process, about the curriculum process in Kherson and Kherson region. We know that the children are only studying online, but are we able to organize the proper process under conditions of constant air raid alerts, given that the students and the teachers have to go to the shelters all the time during study? And what is the number of students studying outside Kherson region currently? Basically, it's about 69,000 students studying online. I unfortunately cannot give you the number of students who study from outside Kherson region. Our teachers continue teaching, including from Kherson, talking about air raid alerts. In our case, unfortunately, we cannot work during that time, and within that period that the projectile is incoming from the east bank within 5 or 7 seconds, people just don't make it to the shelter. It's only the rule of 3 walls that works here. As to the internet, in all of the settlements where there is no wire internet, they are all provided with Starlinks, so children may use phones and tablets. More than 7,000 tablets were disseminated among the children in Kherson and Kherson region. We're expecting another shipment to arrive from the Ministry of Education, which cooperates with USAID on this project and a number of other organizations to whom we submitted our requests. So we're waiting for another shipment of tablets so our children have gadgets to study and internet where it's not available so far. Thank you very much for information, Mr. Oleksandr. I'm reminding you, joining us online was Oleksandr Tolokonnikov, the spokesman of the Kherson Regional Military Administration and Ukraine Media Center. Ukrinform will continue its operation at 1400, and we will be talking about the ban on the import of Ukrainian grain and the WTO lawsuit against the 3 countries. Thank you. Stay tuned.